A lonely man decides to adopt a little girl with Down syndrome to fill the void in his life. But when an illness threatens to separate them, she will make an unexpected sacrifice that will change their destinies forever. The sound of children's laughter resonated in the hallway of the orphanage, an echo that filled Roberto's heart with a mixture of nostalgia and curiosity. At 40 years old, he had decided to embark on a new purpose: volunteering. Although his life had always revolved around work and responsibilities, he felt that something was missing, a void that he could not define. It was then that his steps led him to that place, a refuge for children looking for a home, a family, a future. As he walked through the front door, he was greeted by the orphanage director, a kind woman who explained to him the task he could perform as a volunteer. However, as she spoke, something caught his attention: a small figure in the corner of the room. It was a little girl, no more than 3 years old, playing with a worn-out teddy bear. Her brown hair fell in soft curls over her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with innocent curiosity. There was something about her that made him stop, as if time had frozen for an instant. "This is Clara," the director said, following her gaze. "She is one of our most special children. She has Down syndrome, but her joy lights up any room." Roberto approached slowly, careful with each step as if he were afraid of breaking the magic of the moment. Clara looked up and gave him a smile that dismantled all the barriers he didn't even know he had. At first, she seemed shy, but within minutes she began showing him her toys, pointing excitedly at the stuffed animal she was hugging tightly. "What is your name?" Roberto asked with a smile. "Toto," she replied, pronouncing the word with effort, but with a tenderness that melted his heart. Over the next few hours, Roberto discovered that there was something special about Clara, something that went beyond her condition. There was an immediate connection, a spark that ignited a feeling in him that he had not experienced before. When it was time to leave, he found himself hesitating, looking back again and again as he walked toward the exit. That night, sitting in the silence of his apartment, he couldn't stop thinking about Clara. He remembered her laugh, her lively eyes, and the way she had trusted him so quickly. Something inside him told him that his life would never be the same again. As he looked out the window at the illuminated city, he made a decision that would change his destiny forever. He would begin the adoption process. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He'd heard stories of parents facing enormous challenges, raising children with special needs. But for the first time in years, he felt like he had a clear purpose. Giving Clara a home full of love and opportunity became his new mission, a commitment he was willing to fulfill no matter the difficulties. Translated from Spanish to English. www.onlinedoctortranslator.com. The next day, he returned to the orphanage. When Clara saw him, she ran to him with open arms, as if she knew that somehow this man would be more than a volunteer in her life. The sound of laughter and small footsteps filled Roberto's apartment, a space that until recently had been quiet and tidy. Now Clara's toys were scattered across the floor, and the walls were beginning to reflect an unexpected warmth, adorned with drawings that she enthusiastically colored. Clara's arrival had transformed their home, turning it into a place full of life. From day one, Roberto worked hard to create an environment in which Clara could feel safe and loved. The routine was new to both of them: breakfasts accompanied by laughter, afternoons playing in the nearby park, and nights reading stories until Clara fell asleep with her inseparable stuffed animal Toto. Sometimes he would watch her sleep and couldn't help but smile, feeling an inexplicable gratitude for having found her. However, it wasn't all easy. Clara needed more attention and care than the average child, and Roberto, despite his good intentions, knew he had a lot to learn. He spent hours reading books and articles about raising children with Down syndrome, attending workshops, and seeking guidance from professionals. Each new discovery helped him better understand his daughter's needs, from her physical development to her emotional learning. One of the most challenging moments occurred during the first week, when Clara refused to eat a dish he had carefully prepared. She crossed her arms, looking at the food with a serious expression, and Roberto felt frustration rising inside him. But instead of insisting, he remembered what he had read: patience. "You don't like it?" he asked calmly. Clara shook her head, and Roberto, smiling, got up to find another option. When he returned with a simple plate of macaroni and cheese, Clara clapped her hands excitedly before digging in. It was a small triumph, but for Roberto, it was a valuable lesson. Parenting wasn't just about teaching, it was also about learning and adapting. Each day together strengthened the bond between them. Clara began to call him Dad, a word she initially pronounced timidly, but which soon became a call full of trust and love. For Roberto, hearing her say it was a constant reminder of the responsibility he had assumed and the immense privilege of being her father. Clara's adaptation was also evident. She felt comfortable exploring her new home, inventing games and always seeking Roberto's company. The apartment walls, once cold and empty, were now decorated with photographs of the two of them. Clara in the park with a big smile, Roberto helping her ride her bike, and both of them hugging in front of the Christmas tree they had decorated together. At night, when silence filled the house again, Roberto reflected on how his life had changed in such a short time. Before, his days were filled with work and a loneliness he barely recognized. Now his world revolved around Clara, and although the responsibilities were greater, so was the joy and purpose he felt. Over time, Roberto realized that Clara was not only learning from him, but also transforming him. Her laughter, her determination, and her ability to find happiness in the simplest things taught him the true meaning of unconditional love. Roberto and Clara's first few months together had been a mix of learning and moments of pure happiness. However, as Clara grew, challenges that Roberto had not anticipated also began to arise. Society, often cruel and prejudiced, did not always view Clara with the same loving eyes that he did. One day while they were walking in the park, Roberto noticed the furtive glances of some parents. A little boy pointed at Clara and asked his mother, "Why do you speak like that?" The woman, visibly uncomfortable, pulled her son's arm without responding. Roberto felt a pang of rage, but decided to concentrate on Clara, who at that moment was trying to reach a swing. "Come, I'll help you," said Roberto, carefully lifting her up and sitting her on the swing. Clara's joyful laughter drowned out any negative thoughts in his mind. Despite these awkward moments, Roberto clung to Clara's small triumphs. One of them was the day she said her first complete sentence, "Dad, let's go to the park." Those words, spoken with effort, but with a clarity that filled him with pride, were the result of months of therapy and hours spent practicing together at home. For Roberto, each of Clara's achievements was a victory worth more than any professional or personal recognition he had ever had in his life. However, the road was not always easy. There were days when therapy sessions were exhausting for Clara, and she would come home crying, unable to express what she felt. At those times, Roberto would hug her and repeat over and over again, "I'm here with you, and I always will be." The challenges weren't just limited to the emotional. Roberto also faced comments from people close to him who questioned his decision to adopt Clara. "Are you sure you can handle this alone?" a coworker once asked him. Although those words hurt him, Roberto refused to doubt his choice. Clara was his daughter, and the love he felt for her outweighed any obstacles that might come his way. One afternoon, while Clara was practicing walking with a ball in the garden, Roberto remembered some advice he had received from a therapist. "Don't focus on limitations, but on possibilities." That phrase became his mantra, a guide that helped him stay strong during difficult times. Over time, Clara's progress became more evident. She took her first steps without support at the age of 4, an achievement that brought tears of joy to Roberto's eyes. He captured the moment with his camera, promising himself that he would always keep those memories to remind him of how far they had come together. The connection between them grew stronger with each challenge overcome. Clara, in her own way, also taught him important lessons. Her perseverance and ability to find joy in the little things inspired Roberto to be better every day. One night, while Clara was sleeping soundly, Roberto looked at the ceiling of his room and allowed himself a moment of reflection. He knew that the road ahead would be long and full of obstacles, but he also knew that he was not alone. Clara, with her love and her courage, was his reason to keep going, no matter what difficulties they might face. The years passed, and Clara began to show progress that neither doctors nor teachers had anticipated. Roberto could not contain his pride every time he saw his daughter face her challenges with determination. Her active participation in school was an example of this. Although the task required more time and effort, Clara managed to complete them with enthusiasm, always with a smile and a sparkle in her eyes that filled Roberto with joy. One day, while attending a meeting at school, Clara's teacher showed her a drawing she had made. It was a landscape with a bright sun, colorful flowers, and two figures holding hands. "It's you and Clara, Mr. Roberto," said the teacher, smiling. Roberto took the paper and looked at it carefully. The lines were simple, but the message was clear. To Clara, he was her hero, her sunshine, the person who made her world shine. He fought back tears as he thanked his teacher. On the way home, Clara jumped for joy, proud of her creation. "Dad, you and I are a team," she said, and Roberto nodded, unable to speak for emotion. At those moments, Roberto realized that all the effort and nights of worry were worth it. Seeing Clara overcome obstacles, from learning to write her name to participating in a school play, was a reward that filled every corner of his heart. One time, Clara had to recite a short phrase at a school event. For weeks, they practiced together, repeating the words over and over again. When the day finally arrived, Roberto was in the audience, nervous but excited. Clara went up on stage and, although she seemed scared at first, she took a deep breath and said her words with a clarity that drew applause from everyone present. Roberto stood up from his seat, applauding louder than anyone else. "That's my daughter," he exclaimed proudly, not caring about the surprised looks around him. Beyond her academic achievements, Clara also proved to be a girl full of empathy and love. Often, when Roberto came home tired from work, she would run to him with a glass of water or a drawing she had made to cheer him up. These small gestures were enough to remind him that Clara's love was unconditional and deep. One night, while reading her a bedtime story, Clara interrupted the story and stared at him. "Dad, are you proud of me too?" Roberto put the book aside and hugged her tightly. "More than you can imagine, my love. You are my greatest pride." Clara smiled and closed her eyes, falling asleep in his arms. For Roberto, that moment encapsulated everything it meant to be a father. Being present, loving unconditionally, and celebrating every small achievement as if it were a miracle. With each step Clara took, Roberto felt that she was not only exceeding the expectations of others, but also his own. He, who had once doubted his ability to be a good father, now felt fulfilled, knowing that he was raising an exceptional person, full of love and courage. The afternoon sun filtered through the curtains of the small dining room as Roberto and Clara shared their favorite moment of the day: baking cookies. The kitchen had become a sacred space for both of them, where laughter and small pranks transformed the simplest tasks into unforgettable memories. Clara, now a teenager, had an infectious enthusiasm, mixing the dough with so much energy that flour covered the table and part of her face. "Dad, look! I'm a professional chef!" she exclaimed, laughing as Roberto tried to clean up the mess. "If you're the chef, I'll be your disastrous assistant," he replied, laughing with her. Over the years, Roberto had learned that simple moments, like cooking together or going for a walk, were the ones that strengthened their relationship. Clara, with her warm character and sense of humor, had filled their home with a joy that seemed inexhaustible. However, they had also faced moments of sadness. Roberto clearly remembered the day they had to say goodbye to Toto, Clara's inseparable stuffed animal. Although the stuffed animal was already worn by time, she clung to it like a treasure. When she finally accepted that it was time to put it away in a box, they both shared silent tears. "I will always remember Toto, but now I have other beautiful memories with you, Dad," said Clara, hugging him tightly. Clara's ability to find light in difficult times was one of the things Roberto admired most. Although she now showed increasing independence, he remained a person deeply connected to his father. He had begun to make his own decisions, such as choosing his extracurricular activities, but he always sought Roberto's advice before committing to anything important. One day after school, Clara came home with a big smile and some exciting news. "Dad, I'm going to be part of the theater group. I got a part in the play." Roberto felt a mixture of pride and nostalgia. The shy girl he had known years ago now faced the world with a confidence he had never imagined. He attended every rehearsal, supporting her from the shadows, and on the day of the premiere, he sat in the front row, applauding as he always did, with enthusiasm and overflowing love. Their relationship was more than just that of father and daughter. It was a partnership built on trust and unconditional love. Even on the most difficult days when worries seemed to cloud the horizon, they always found comfort in each other. One afternoon, while they were walking together in the park, Clara took Roberto's hand and looked at him seriously. "Dad, I'll always be with you, no matter what happens." Roberto paused for a moment, surprised by the depth of her words. He hugged her tightly, aware that the bond they had built was indestructible. "And I will always be with you, my little warrior," he replied in a firm voice. At that moment, under the orange sky of the sunset, Roberto and Clara reaffirmed the love that united them. It was a love that needed no words, a love that had overcome obstacles and that would continue to grow stronger, no matter what the future held for them. The day began like any other. Roberto was preparing breakfast while Clara hummed a tune in the living room. The routine they had built together, full of simplicity and love, always gave him a sense of stability. But that morning, an invisible shadow loomed over him. He felt a persistent tiredness, a weakness that he couldn't ignore. Hours later, sitting in the cold hospital waiting room, he looked impatiently at the clock. He had decided to get a checkup after weeks of discomfort, but he did not expect that the results would change his life forever. The doctor, with a serious expression, entered the room with an envelope in his hand. "Roberto, we have the results of your tests." His tone was slow, almost careful. "I'm sorry, but you have a degenerative disease that will require immediate treatment." The words echoed in his mind like an endless echo. Although he tried to process them calmly, the weight of the news was overwhelming. The first thing he thought of was Clara. "How much time do I have?" he asked with a broken voice. "It will depend on the treatment and how your body responds," the doctor replied, avoiding looking him directly in the eyes. "But you must act quickly." On the way home, Roberto felt fear creeping in. He couldn't help but imagine what would happen to Clara if he wasn't there to take care of her. They had faced so many challenges together, and he had always promised to be by her side. Now that promise seemed to be in jeopardy. When he arrived at the apartment, Clara greeted him with her usual smile, but Roberto could barely hold her gaze. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked, noticing his expression. "Yes, my love, just a little tired," he replied, trying hard to sound convincing. He decided not to tell her, at least for now. Clara had a special sensitivity and could sense when something was not right, but Roberto wanted to protect her. That night, while she slept, he sat in the dimness of the living room, surrounded by silence. He wondered how he could face this battle without affecting Clara, how he could continue to be her rock while his own body weakened. In the days that followed, she tried to keep up her routine as usual. She helped Clara with her homework, attended her school activities, and cooked her favorite meals. However, her exhaustion was becoming more evident, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to hide it. At times, his mind drifted into the future, to a scenario where Clara would have to face the world without him. The thought terrified him, but it also motivated him. He decided to research treatment options, even though the thought of costs worried him deeply. One afternoon, as he watched Clara draw at the dining room table, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, not physical, but emotional. He knew he had to be strong for her, but he also knew he couldn't hide the truth forever. In his mind, there was only one priority: making sure Clara had everything she needed, even if he couldn't be by her side. "I'm going to fight for her no matter what," he murmured to himself, like a silent promise under the gray sky visible from the window. Clara had always had a special sensitivity to her father's emotions. Although Roberto tried to maintain the appearance of normality, his body and energy began to betray him. The days became heavier, and the smile that always lit up his face seemed more and more forced. Clara observed in silence each one of these changes. One afternoon, while Roberto was resting on the sofa, Clara noticed that he was breathing with difficulty. She approached him, caressing his forehead. "Dad, are you sick?" she asked in a soft but worried voice. Roberto opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "I'm just tired, my love. Nothing to worry about." But Clara was not convinced. That same night, while Roberto was sleeping, she decided to investigate on her own. She found papers on his desk, medical reports, and words that she did not fully understand, but which confirmed what she suspected. Her father was seriously ill. The impact of the truth was like a blow to the chest. Clara locked herself in her room, tears falling silently down her face. For years, Roberto had been her pillar, her protector, and now she felt the world was shaking beneath her feet. Yet amidst the sadness and fear, something inside her began to ignite, a fierce determination. The next day, Clara confronted Roberto with the papers in hand. "Dad, why didn't you tell me anything?" she asked, her voice shaking. Roberto was silent for a moment, unable to find the right words. Finally, he sighed and sat down next to her at the dining table. "I didn't want to worry you, Clara. You've been through so much, and I didn't want you to carry this too." Clara looked at him, tears in her eyes, but with an unexpected firmness. "I'm stronger than you think, Dad. If you've always been there for me, now it's my turn to be with you." Roberto felt his heart fill with pride and sadness at the same time. He knew Clara was right, but he still found it hard to accept that she, his little girl, had to shoulder such a huge burden. Over the next few days, Clara began looking for ways to help Roberto without him knowing. She spoke to his teachers and neighbors, quietly asking if they knew of any work she could do. Although many doubted that a teenager could contribute in a meaningful way, her determination and seriousness convinced some. Clara began taking care of gardens, walking dogs, and helping with simple tasks at nearby houses. Each small task was a step closer to her goal, raising enough money to support her father. Meanwhile, Roberto, unaware of Clara's efforts, noticed something different about her. She seemed busier, more tired, but also more determined. One night while she was sleeping, he entered her room and watched her silently. He noticed how much she had grown, how his little girl was becoming a brave and compassionate young woman. No matter what challenges they faced, Roberto knew that Clara was his greatest strength, his reason to keep fighting. Clara's mornings began to be different. She no longer spent as much time drawing or reading on the couch. Instead, she left early, carrying a small backpack, and returned later than usual. Roberto noticed this, but every time he asked her, she responded with a smile and a quick excuse. "I'm helping a friend with his homework, Dad." The truth, however, was far more complex. Clara had found odd jobs in the neighborhood, tasks that allowed her to scrape together what little money she could earn. She walked dogs, babysat, and cleaned yards, all in the hope of easing her father's financial burden. The days were getting longer and more tiring, but Clara didn't complain. In her mind, there was only one goal: to help Roberto. Each coin she kept in a small box hidden in her closet was a reminder of her love for him and of everything he had done for her. One day, while cleaning up fallen leaves in a neighbor's garden, the woman approached with a bottle of water. "Clara, honey, why are you doing this? You're a little girl. You should be playing with your friends." Clara looked down, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "It's for my dad. He always takes care of me, and now it's my turn to take care of him." The neighbor, moved by her sincerity, decided to pay her a little more than agreed, and Clara accepted it with gratitude. Not every day was easy, though. Sometimes Clara came home with sore feet and rough hands from work. Sometimes she barely had the energy to eat dinner and help Roberto with the chores before bed. But she never let her father see how hard it was for her. Roberto, for his part, was beginning to notice signs that worried him. Clara, always so expressive, seemed to be keeping secrets, and her tiredness was evident. Although he tried to ask her, she always changed the subject or distracted him with some funny anecdote. One afternoon, as Clara was returning home, she met Don Luis, the owner of a nearby shop. He looked at her with curiosity, having heard rumors about her work. "Clara, why don't you ask me for help?" he asked in a kind tone. She quickly shook her head, trying not to show weakness. "I don't want anyone else to worry. This is something I have to do for my dad." Even though her body was exhausted, the love she felt for Roberto gave her the strength to continue. Every time she thought about everything he had sacrificed for her, about all the times he had been by her side, she found the courage to keep going. In her little box, coins and bills slowly piled up, a symbol of her effort and determination. Clara knew that what she did was not enough to solve all of her father's problems, but she also knew that every little gesture counted. At night, as Roberto watched her sleep, he couldn't help but feel that something had changed in his daughter. Clara wasn't just growing up. She was becoming an extraordinary young woman, someone who faced challenges with a courage he could never have imagined. Clara's birthday dawned with a clear sky and a light breeze coming through the windows of the small apartment. Roberto had planned something special to celebrate, despite the limitations they faced. He had prepared a simple cake and decorated the living room with balloons and colorful garlands. Clara, upon entering the dining room, was surprised to see her father's effort. "Dad, this is beautiful, thank you," she said, hugging him tightly. "You deserve everything, my love," Roberto replied, stroking her hair. Throughout the day, they received visits from some nearby neighbors who wanted to congratulate Clara. Don Luis, the owner of the store, appeared with a box of chocolates, and Mrs. Marta brought flowers from the garden. But among all the displays of affection, Clara seemed to be waiting for the right moment to do something. As the evening began to fall, Clara approached Roberto with an envelope in her hand. Her expression was serious, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Dad, I have something for you. It's my birthday present, but it's actually for you." Roberto, intrigued, took the envelope and opened it. Inside, he found carefully arranged bills and coins. For a moment, he didn't understand what he was looking at. "Clara, what is this?" he asked with a trembling voice. "This is what I've been saving up these past few months. I've been working in gardens, taking care of dogs, doing everything I can. I want you to use this for your treatment, Dad." Roberto felt the world stop. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at his daughter, who was watching him with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "But Clara, you didn't have to do this," he began to say, but she interrupted him. "Yes, I had to, Dad. You've always been there for me, and now I want to be there for you." Roberto's heart filled with a mixture of emotions he couldn't describe. He had never felt love, gratitude, and pride in his life, but never in such an intense way as at that moment. He knelt in front of Clara, taking her hands carefully. "You are the most amazing person I know, Clara. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I promise I will fight with all my might." They hugged each other, letting their emotions flow freely. For Roberto, Clara's gesture was not only an act of love, but also a lesson. His daughter, despite her young age, was showing him what sacrifice and courage really meant. That evening, as they ate the cake Roberto had prepared, the atmosphere in the house was different. Although the problems had not disappeared, Clara's determination had ignited a new spark of hope in him. Before going to sleep, Roberto took the envelope and put it away carefully. He knew that the money Clara had collected was much more than a financial resource. It was a symbol of the unbreakable bond they had built, a reminder that they were not alone in this battle. As Clara fell asleep, Roberto looked at the ceiling with a smile. He now had a new reason to fight, a renewed purpose. Not only to keep going, but to do so with the same strength and love that his daughter had shown him. Roberto, for his part, was beginning to notice signs that worried him. Clara, always so expressive, seemed to be keeping secrets, and her tiredness was evident. Although he tried to ask her, she always changed the subject or distracted him with some funny anecdote. One afternoon, as Clara was returning home, she met Don Luis, the owner of a nearby shop. He looked at her with curiosity, having heard rumors about her work. "Clara, why don't you ask me for help?" he asked in a kind tone. She quickly shook her head, trying not to show weakness. "I don't want anyone else to worry. This is something I have to do for my dad." Even though her body was exhausted, the love she felt for Roberto gave her the strength to continue. Every time she thought about everything he had sacrificed for her, about all the times he had been by her side, she found the courage to keep going. In her little box, coins and bills slowly piled up, a symbol of her effort and determination. Clara knew that what she did was not enough to solve all of her father's problems, but she also knew that every little gesture counted. At night, as Roberto watched her sleep, he couldn't help but feel that something had changed in his daughter. Clara wasn't just growing up. She was becoming an extraordinary young woman, someone who faced challenges with a courage he could never have imagined. Clara's birthday dawned with a clear sky and a light breeze coming through the windows of the small apartment. Roberto had planned something special to celebrate, despite the limitations they faced. He had prepared a simple cake and decorated the living room with balloons and colorful garlands. Clara, upon entering the dining room, was surprised to see her father's effort. "Dad, this is beautiful, thank you," she said, hugging him tightly. "You deserve everything, my love," Roberto replied, stroking her hair. Throughout the day, they received visits from some nearby neighbors who wanted to congratulate Clara. Don Luis, the owner of the store, appeared with a box of chocolates, and Mrs. Marta brought flowers from the garden. But among all the displays of affection, Clara seemed to be waiting for the right moment to do something. As the evening began to fall, Clara approached Roberto with an envelope in her hand. Her expression was serious, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Dad, I have something for you. It's my birthday present, but it's actually for you." Roberto, intrigued, took the envelope and opened it. Inside, he found carefully arranged bills and coins. For a moment, he didn't understand what he was looking at. "Clara, what is this?" he asked with a trembling voice. "This is what I've been saving up these past few months. I've been working in gardens, taking care of dogs, doing everything I can. I want you to use this for your treatment, Dad." Roberto felt the world stop. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at his daughter, who was watching him with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "But Clara, you didn't have to do this," he began to say, but she interrupted him. "Yes, I had to, Dad. You've always been there for me, and now I want to be there for you." Roberto's heart filled with a mixture of emotions he couldn't describe. He had never felt love, gratitude, and pride in his life, but never in such an intense way as at that moment. He knelt in front of Clara, taking her hands carefully. "You are the most amazing person I know, Clara. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I promise I will fight with all my..." Dawn brought a different energy to the small apartment. Roberto sat by the window looking at the sky with a renewed sense of purpose. The night before, he had made a decision that marked the beginning of a new stage in his life. He would accept treatment and face his illness with the same courage that Clara had taught him. The process was not easy. The sessions were long and exhausting, and there were days when he felt he couldn't continue. But every time he thought about giving up, he remembered Clara's smile and the sacrifice she had made for him. Her words echoed in his mind like a mantra. "I'll always be with you, Dad." Clara, for her part, never stopped being his biggest support. Even though she no longer had to work in the gardens or take care of the dogs, she still found ways to be there. She would draw little notes of encouragement that she would leave on the breakfast table, or tell him made-up stories to distract him during the toughest days. Roberto realized that he was not only fighting for himself, but for her as well. Over time, the efforts began to bear fruit. Roberto began to regain his strength, and the doctors confirmed that he was responding positively to the treatment. The news filled Clara's heart with joy, and she organized a small celebration at home with the same balloons and garlands that they had used on her birthday. "I knew you would do it, Dad," she said as she served a slice of cake. "Thanks to you, my love," Roberto replied, hugging her tightly. Recovery not only marked a physical change for Roberto, but also an emotional transformation. For the first time in a long time, he felt he had a new opportunity, not just to live, but to do something meaningful with the story he and Clara had built together. They both decided to use their experience as inspiration to help others. They began to participate in community meetings, sharing their story with families facing similar challenges. Clara, with her warm character and simple way of explaining things, became a source of motivation for children and young people. One afternoon, while they were walking together in the park, Roberto looked at Clara with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "You know something," he said, stopping under a tree. "You taught me the true meaning of unconditional love." Clara smiled and took his hand. "And you taught me to never give up." That day, as the sun began to set, they both felt that the future was full of possibilities. The connection they had built, forged through sacrifices, challenges, and moments of immense love, was now stronger than ever. Over time, Clara decided to study something related to social work, inspired by the history she shared with her father. Roberto, for his part, dedicated his days to creating a community program to support families with children with special needs. The two worked as a team, transforming the difficulties of the past into tools to build a better future. The small apartment was still their home, but now it was filled with new memories, new goals, and a love that would continue to guide them. Under the stars of that quiet night, father and daughter reaffirmed that together, they could face anything. The story of Roberto and Clara reminds us that unconditional love not only transcends difficulties, but also transforms us deeply. In the darkest moments, they both showed that true strength lies in the bonds we build with those we love. Now I ask you, what would you have done in their place? How would you face a situation in which sacrifice and hope are your only guide? Click on the video on the screen to continue this exciting journey of self-discovery and discover stories that will inspire you even more. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive content full of reflections, learnings, and emotions that enrich the soul. See you in the next video.